Namo Guru Be Namo Budaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guru Be Namo Budaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guru Be Namo Budaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Kande Laje Gunje Dogane Raga Shos Tongde Chunze Shuje Gyab Gunje Lozan Zhang Seda Je Mede She Su Zu Dunje Nam Singde Bende De Jizu Lama Yebe Zumka Talo Debe Shenam Shinjo To Denba Sheje Chungkuen Jabe Lo Zhendo Kesa Nabe Yinjo Leshe Tabe Beje Hame Debe Tongde Chenbe Dende Lacha Ye Wo Sheye Nazo Medo Zang Geshe Dobe Nangse Chiche Weisha Yizhi Chujin Xinzhuo Jela Chuba Kanxi Tome Tene Saba Ye Lingwa Kebaran Dongba Sum Ye Medun Cho Ningnen Jeba Sozo Sha Ningmen Dede Mangde Rula Cheje Bangbe Denjo Denye Je Gongbo Cheje Labjin Daja Samban Tabe Yirang Chizi Laman Damba Henan Ye Chugu Kala Cheda Zambe Deje Sima Saje Cheje Chawa Abdo Namda Weze Yingle Shenba Ye Sonjo Kola Chado Min Tame Nango Shugo Rada Sede Mado Mino Demba Dazo Chinye Sabe Gewon De Denda Kebra Jezu Losan Changba Ye Dembe Ningbo Rindo Seje Meme Zebe Deje Jere Se Chime Kembe Wangbo Changbe Dewa Wangde Jomze Sanwe Da Kanje Losan Kabe Shabla Sowande Meme Zebe Deje Jere Chime Kembe Wangbo Changbe Dewa Male Jomze Sanwe Da Kanje Kebe Zoje Losan Kabe Shala Sowan De Mime Seve Deje Chime Kembe Wangbo Jambe Yang Dewong Kaje Kebe Zujen Zonga Losan Pande Zave Lama Rinpoche Shiguram Bende Dejo, Kade Shimbe Gone Cheso, Kuzon Toje, Wando Zedo, Pande Save, Lama Rimbo, Tazo Ningaram Beme Dejo, Kade Choda Timo Wando Zedo, Pande Save, Lama Rimbo, Tazo Ningara Bemen Dejola Kade Chanjo Ningbe Bado Demba Enjo Mazan Jeme Shera Mareje Maje Manga Namge Mo Sozo Rani Yeje Ju Tezo Geve Yong Chaze Lo Deyan Tang Gaden Bara Bodhisattva So Deyan Tang Gaden Bara Sangande Bodhisattva So Deyan Tang Gaden Bara Bodhisattva Gere Tongda Jajo Shewa Temba Loje Pizan Sajo Ne Dashi Ayo Yo Sa Shimbe Jo Let me remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation, or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta, altruistic motivation, we should participate in this Bodhisattva's discourse on the perfection of concentration.
在群众的他这一下，年下我找到的他现在他天天把这里找到专业，也把没把我天天嘛写了下的。
Just to recapitulate what we already talked about 2 weeks back, we talked about what's wrong or the demerits of being attached to the dear and near ones, and also a little bit about hating our enemies, or who we see as our enemies. And so we will continue our discussion from where we left off last time, and we are going to talk about how relationships among us in samsara are in flux. They are very uncertain. They are very changing in nature. In other words, friends become enemies, enemies become friends, and they become strangers. And so this is the kind of changing dynamic relationships that we have with each other in samsara.
这当然啊，年了下不是一昂的，现在一定是准备，这边没救呀。那他妈的年了，我们个下巴的找的，当我们先吧，包括了，空的这个下巴没吧，没了我跟着些在讲，同时点把人喏，这年了下到本国这样是本上学吧。 人性那人性呢？这样走就是这样的提醒，这样就是提醒开始讲呢，慢慢就是慢慢提醒讲呢，这问就是提醒在心就人的呢，老中的没是那样傻没傻。 年了个位身体能做它，多年给了现在下不下，是才定义了样，这些平时的就能做完的，就能做完的，提醒的，他的年那么才个行的，这就说人是跑一脚的，是这类。 怕你陪你妈的兄弟你就这说的，新年的老八九的，学的来的，夸他给我干嘛去接送噻？现在这年了，他就的，人世间的相当给我干的，快乐去了，老的，头发看样，米子上的。 就给我等，前边查到说，那边用的前几年了一种这个小事，小事老对了，这在长期间也徐北随机前几叫呢，我们的广播的那个小学校，那时候这个的拿着么，对吧？他那的电视经。 或者什么他的信息呢？没把这位签了，点把的那样来面享受，少没多，就是松散这样，干的年了下边年把的，这个下把的工作，其他的点把赢了，这了其他下边年把的，这帮子我随便留也不行。 也不是代表的大如此，我这里他可是的可是相当的，你的相当你西边他西这个马来西亚的地区的他，你了下我的这了可是，当我现在是定的要我这个马来西亚定的相当你们的线呢，他的就这的他。 in the Daniel Yeva Yomers that Judici or the Dad Jiche, that Darasita, they do in the share. So the Daniel called Joangas to send the like Yeva Yomers. So the Daniel Yeva me and Dashawa that yes, because the Dala don't want the Yel Shawa Shell. You did me ever do Zala. Said that Dala. No, the Yel Shawa de Goyag, you did Tatu to the Tiri.
As Keshla read from the extensive commentary and explained, in which many different types of sutras have been cited to substantiate the point, and also shastras. The point that we have been trying to make is this, that we should not get attached to the dear and near ones, and we should not hate our enemies. So attachment and hatred are something that we must work with and get rid of. Otherwise, when our mind is perturbed by attachment and hatred, we cannot develop concentration. Okay? And so the way we can sort of work with attachment and hatred and get rid of them is by way of reflecting on what's wrong with them. What are the disadvantages or the faults of being attached to dear and near ones and hating our enemies. And actually, when we really look deeply into this matter, we really don't find solid reasoning why we should get attached to the dear and near ones and we hate enemies. And one of the reasons that really help us to understand this better is the uncertainty of relationships among us in samsara. Relationships do change, isn't it? Don't they? And, of course, when we think in terms of many lifetimes within samsara, of course, our relationships do change from one rebirth to another rebirth. But even in this lifetime, we do see our relationships do change, that friends become enemies and enemies become friends. There is no such thing as what we call everlasting kind of a friendship or enemies. In other words, there are no such thing that this is going to be my friend forever and forever, and this is going to be my enemy forever and forever. There is no such thing or relationship. Relationships do change and they are in flux, right? And so this is why if our relationships do change from being friend to being enemy and being enemy to being friend, there is really no good reason solid why we get attached to the dear and near ones and we hate so-called enemies.
What is a Karza? That is using control he was at the Dajing ever never used in gold to hidden the song at the Pan Puri Mani Shumanis, Judah Joa the Nye down, Dobati Ye the Cherry. To let the Quada never got mashes. Or there I said, Tavari Dada, the Nye, she did. So Tendele in Jura, so goes over to Rovati, Lumugorova. The Joanga Silbert, as she said, and Tendel Patti, Joanga Marshal, the Shumashi, Yavayo Mars. Said that this is the dog at Yanga dashes the Queen still Shashilia, down where Judemia in Southern Goyim, that Dajing Yeva Meva Pita, Judem to things that
a great Indian master, Arya Nagarjuna, Gombuluruv, in his letter to a friend, Shedding Shurlik, it tells us, it gives us examples of how relationships do change in samsara. And as Krishna explains, that a father can become a son, mother can become a wife, an enemy can become a friend, right? And of course, this happens, as we change our lives within samsara. But in this life, we ourselves have witness, right? We don't need any scriptural quotation or reasonings, because when we can see with our own naked eyes what's happening, so that's just a direct experience, perception, how friends become enemies and enemies become friends. If that is true, as we say it is, then friends, when when they become enemies, they have harmed us. When enemies have become our friends, they have helped us, right? Isn't it? So what's the point of getting attached too much to the dear and near ones, and hating the enemies? Because the reason is the same. They both have benefited us. They both have harmed us. So why, make a big, huge difference between them, as if friends are friends forever and enemies are enemies forever? They are not such things. Okay? So this is, I think, a principal reason, main reason, why there is no valid, solid ground or to stand upon, and why we do get attached to dear and near ones, and why we hate enemies.
다들 센데를 야자인 예가면서 소소사 배지 무슨 무슨 조사하여서 들으자控制고 말아 제대로 다시 저 인체멜 연시저도 어디에 가서 라르드서 여러 참지 배 조고제 시부제메고 니마시 콜미나 데메도 차지 건설도 거메도 되살베 코로나야 들으셔요. 지금 무슨 자다도 거시다. 데 무슨 조사 데 다니게바 메디 코르다 지다디 에니 무슨 조세 다 겨가지 사실 요메바디 롱도 조사 대세다 다체데 겨가지는 가지 다시바 신용 내시바 신용 손사 ku니가가 에니 그 자신으로 제메바 샤로 자신으로 샤이나 에니 샤나 제가 야마라 샤다 제디 소소를 비 심예로 샤니 그 샤나 제거로 So so
as Krishna explained, that we ourselves may have experience or witness in this life how friends become enemies and enemies have become friends, and that's something we directly experience it, and there is no need for any kind of scriptural quotation authority to establish that point. And but when we think in terms of rebirths within samsara, then we do need scriptural authority to establish the point that our relationships do change as our rebirths change. And so the bottom line is this, that both our friends and enemies have been either equally kind to us, or they both have been equally nasty to us, isn't it? So if we want to feel close to them, we should feel equally close to them. They have benefited us. And if we don't feel close to them, they haven't, they have harmed us in the same way as we think in terms of many lifetimes. Yeah. And so as we equalize, in other words, we think about these uncertainty relationships, that really helps us to be able to deal with our attachment to dear and near ones and to enemies. Because attachment, is contingent upon feeling close to someone, isn't it? Right? Because we think, wow, they have been nice to us, they have been kind to us, they are very close to me. Well, all beings have been close to us, right? That's what we said. Or they have been equally nasty to us, So in that sense, that there is no point of dividing among sentient beings as if these are the ones I should really get attached to, and these are the ones I should really hate. That is just our own sort of a creation, fabrication, because in reality, they all have been kind, they all have been unkind to us.
Oh, this is Chewa Shakdang so is Yewen Jungni, Kim Jin Bala, Yin by Yijua Jeva shows, love to less. Today, Chokujin, she was 3 years. Kim Ji John Tam Jonam, Dom de Gomba never shall hear shower. Neso, she get the dog mercy. Tibetan radio dancing. Put the Sumatala. See, Shena, never say Kimla. Demba de Naya Lami, Shonju, Top Shonju, so meet up. Jason La, then come there, near the Chevy Nevada. There, Shaban Goba, Zuji, Shida, Demba Yena. That is like Shedan Chevy Nevada. The Ponzu, the Marsube, Lulis, never have Demba Taros. What did that? Shadan, you were the data, because the Shaban Gozu, Denguis. 그래서 해당과 대 수vel료가 되 해당이 코르니가 같이 제가 해서라와 드니 해야시는 근데 네가 쓸려 년 샤바 지자데 바까니 히고리스 제가 년 샤바데 샤메르 규데 조르 카레세는 아니 다니에가 메와 조셰 디 센데로 소소 무슨 조셰 제가 심마 롱드도 저거도 코아도 여가 마신 고벌도 롱드세서 제가 센데서 심마 가와 때나 아니 다니에가 메인자 이제 거 다당고다 년사가 기대 많이 배워서 오늘 저서 그게 차당 가대 샤워로 기대 마셔나 그냥 사대어 예와 열으나 기대하고는 저도 말아 기대하고는 너도 말아 어디샤네다.
To summarize the points that we have, been focused on in this chapter on the perfection of samadhi or concentration, discussion is pretty much focused on and explore more the demerits of attachment to the dear and near ones. In the case of hatred and its demerits, we already talked about that a lot in the chapter on the perfection of patience or tolerance. Okay? And the point here is that attachment to our dear and near ones is really not grounded on a solid rock-based kind of a reasoning. Okay? Because our relationship with each other is in changing nature, as we said, isn't it? And our relatives or dear near ones are not going to be our dear near ones forever and forever, because they could become our enemies, right? And the enemies that we might have are not going to be our enemies forever and forever, because they could become our dear and near ones. And because of these changing relationships that we experience in this life, which we can witness with our own eyes, and we don't need any more reasoning or Dharma quotations here to establish that, because that's what we ourselves directly experience. But we use the Dharma quotations and the authority, such as Arya Nagarjuna's Shurulek, to establish the point that the relationships do change as our rebirths change in samsara. So if that is all true, which it is, then what's the point of attaching too much importance to the dear and near ones and really becoming very clingy, right? Very kind of sticky and being attached to them, because these two might not last long, isn't it? What's the point of hating someone so much as our enemies? Because these two might change, right, into friendship. And so as we consider this uncertainty of relationships and samsara, then we really get a good reason in our hand why we shouldn't be getting attached to so-called dear and near ones and hate the so-called enemies. As we mentioned earlier, that we discuss the demerits of disadvantages or what's wrong with anger and hatred in the chapter on patience or tolerance. Just to kind of remind you that some of the things we talked about in that chapter with regard to what's wrong with anger or hatred or that kind of delusion is that this kind of analysis has been provided in that chapter. Should someone harm you by beat you up with a stick or a rod, or someone use a gun and just pull the trigger on you, right? Now, who should you get angry with? Should you get angry with what has literally harmed you, right? In which case, then we should get mad with the stick and the rod and the gun, isn't it? Because that's what caused the pain. But we said that's silly, isn't it? The gun doesn't fire itself. Somebody pulled the trigger, right? The stick didn't get up by itself and hit me, the stupid person hit me, right? So it's the person we get mad with, isn't it? Because that person is held as responsible for using the gun or the stick or the rod, isn't it? If that's what we're saying, why we should get mad with the person, because person is then the person is also, right, helpless in a sense, is also instigated by his or her, anger and hatred within, isn't it? The person has not done it out of willingness, like, I just love hitting you, right? It just, the mind got disturbed by hatred and anger, some afflictive emotion. So the afflictive emotion is the real culprit, isn't it? The one that really made the person act, and then person pull the trigger or hit us with the rod, isn't it? So if you really want to get mad with who is truly responsible in this situation, then we should get mad with the anger or the hatred of that person, isn't it? So don't get mad with the person, because the person has been the victim of his or her own afflictive emotions, isn't it? So this is how we reflect on the destructive nature of anger and what's wrong with anger, and then we try to deal with our anger, isn't it?
Shiva Suzuju, Longdola, Mumbi, Shiva Lumbananda, Gavanyamba de Tedada, Samsu Sumbara, Migajan, ever, you don't draw on your day. Pabe Chile, Chesam, Kibe Chile, Chile Jevis, Le member Chibi, Le member Chibi Chil. Termase, Danija, Papa Nanda, Sekiva Manyabam. Longdo le kibi ju nanda, kiwa manyambara, shiva mitsumbara. Chibar shina, teta shiva daya, shiva droji shiva dang. Droji shiva dang, lo din tunjo shiva soji, goni. Nyawa tembe, chigi shade, pemba de goba jea, minjuan, disi niga, dungya dang, dungya je. Geshe Pende Gyodang Jeva Nyamji Yen Joy Yimsheros. Or did it die? Shadang Jang Hill this or that. Then the Nyan Shaya the Nyan Shia, quite Chaba Shuksha, the college, Nyan Shaba the Manga. That did not see what the Josh Ramming the Zizan Suju Tamio to Dona Kajigasana. Tameva be Java in Matazona, and the Joyan the Gungers. The Pabet Chudolia Nibata Maya Mara Marjava in Basha Rodes, and Tigres Karza the Java Yamba Yamdo Dredana, and the Jomo the Joyo Maris. Said that this is the thing. Jeda Shabalia Dallas is a Shabaja like me, Zibigo, the Palmala Shaja, Yorati, United to the Tisha. Tatina the Soju, the Pirangal, the Dona, and the Telaya, Stone Manga Jagris. Or Kaya Mazim, Namjia Javare, Kaji say you didn't Tin of Saturday setting says, Conte Toggling did that talking says, Jetta, Dugisia, go to the Vetro Sando, Chodo, Gesa Jero, or take her as a call Peno to the Cha, you as I did the Vetro said no Shabosha, Chodo the pension boy, Jackie could Dugisia and younger, she said, Shiba Suju, Pejaba gave us don't dish your Maris. Don't this is your massacres and you call Tron, she was go Marty. Call by lot of mothers. Could you what the Karsi tell about me by mothers and call Lotte Mazis, the other mothers, call Tron be Jota me the Akasa Marawa. Was the cool just a Madonna, that country?
At the bottom of page 102, stanza 9, those who have the same English translation of the guide by Stephen Batchelors, as I do, stanza 9 reads, if I behave in the same way as the childish sentient beings, I shall certainly proceed to unfortunate states of rebirth. And if I am led there by those unequal to the noble ones, what's the use of entrusting myself to the childish sentient beings, unquote. So Geshe-la's explanation pertains to that stanza. So earlier we talked about the deep merits of being attached to the dear and near ones and hating enemies, which is done more in the chapter on patience. That's just an example given because we tend to have a much stronger attachment to the dear and near ones, right? And we could be attached to strangers too, right? They don't have dear and near ones, but our attachment to the dear and near ones seems to be very strong. So this is just an example given, right? It is not that we only hate enemies, we might hate the dear and near ones too, right? But this stanza that I just read to you, it tells us that we should not follow the way of what we call childish sentient beings, isn't it? The reason for that is that childish sentient beings, if we are in their company, somehow that is more likely to prompt us, to behave in a very diluted and wrong way, So we must not, misunderstand here as if that we should not socialize with them at all, or we should just hate them because these are childish sentient beings. That's not the whole point. What we are saying is we must not trust their sort of way of behavior, which is usually prompted by their afflictive emotions, right? So then we could get negatively influenced by them. So we have to protect ourselves from the negative influence of childish sentient beings. So that's the main point here. That's why often we hear these words being used, my Dharma friends. So what does it mean, right? So Dharma friends are those, who are likely to inspire each other to do the positive thing and benefit us, isn't it? A supporting spiritual system here. We must not get influenced by, for lack of a better word in English, negative friends, right? Some people translate evil friends, but I don't like the word evil. Negative friends, because when we are with the negative friends, or we are being one, then what we teach each other? To do the negative things, isn't it? Yeah. So if we keep ourselves in the company of childish sentient beings, then we could be influenced by their childish behaviors, and then our behaviors could also become childish, in the sense diluted behaviors, and we don't want that to happen. Tibetans have a saying, I don't think it might translate well in English, that if you lean on a poisonous plants, you are likely to get poisoned, poison ivies, right? Just don't lean on them. But if we lean on sort of like say gold-like plants, then some gold dust might rub on us too, right? That's the benefit of that, So this is the same thing here, that it's not like we should not socialize with childish sentient beings, or keep hate them or anything like that, or think of ourselves as more important than them. But what we're talking about here is don't trust them, and don't get influenced by their negative mindset and behaviors. So that's the bottom line point.
What is it? Because any karsa tichu de gorse cause cha miru jude de gorta ganyen yewa me ti do tada de chiba de do me de ma karte gorse na o de chiba do ne miga sa de le nyamba sa ni nyeso chigresin le kona go 좀 샤니 시된 거에서 간지 어저데 경샤 된 거여서 당기 집어디지도 샤바 코노기 그가야도 네바메 시간이 니마데아디 근데 소소 조타메 드로나 어데르지나니 종고일라 그래서 간주다다 소단도도 여러 거사 저저보다 통하디 영세노 저저보다 통하디 파파는 통하지 근데 시원은 마송데 세야지 그들 요마레 어디 세야데 유데데 간지 파파 저는 연대지 거라 소저 타메 저는 좀 맞지야면서 엔티스어라 어디 손데 진노예신이 시다 소저 타메 독지시 세야데 디데스어다 초고도 세네 콜로데도 세야서 어디까지 쉬어 이제야 콜 트레드 거세야 되게 말아.
So earlier we talked about the demerits or the disadvantages of attachment itself. Don't get attached to the dear and near ones as an example, because our relationships are not permanent. They shift and change, and then they could become not the dear and near ones, they could become someone we hate. And so there is no real solid ground why we should get attached to the dear and near ones. This next stanza, which we just talked about, it really talks about the need to protect ourselves from being influenced negatively by the what we call metaphorically childish sentient beings. Yeah. As Geshe said, that in the what called Pratimoksha Sutras, individual emancipation sutras, there are lines which Geshe quoted from his memory. I can't, but some explanation given is that there's quite a difference between what we call childish sentient beings and Aryas or the transcendental beings, isn't it? Aryas or the transcendental beings have incredible qualities, and they usually perceive or see the truth as it is, isn't it? Whereas the ordinary childish sentient beings don't see the realities as it is, as they are, and have a lot of issues and problems and things like that. And so therefore, it is best for us not to become like the trusted friends of childish sentient beings, because then their negative behaviors might rub onto us and we might become the same thing. Okay? So as Geshe tried to clarify this point, don't associate with them. That depends on what's talked about. It doesn't mean that never talk to them or just hate them or something like that. What it really means is do not become a closely knit, trusted friends and then behave exactly like them, because their behaviors tend to be negative, and we don't want to be influenced by their negativities.
박바는 그노스 비게 따주를 상부 결제를 제가 가가 된 거지. 소유주 탐에서야 그 탐에 제가 듣고여서 제가 소유주 탐에도 줘야 돼야 년같이 여러분. 그래서 탐에들이야 노지 셔보시나 인들이야 좀어디 개용하여 말이지. 제가 미국에서 저 박바다 데 조상벌에 줘고 있어요. 근데 근데 남지도에서는 디베 초보세야 되지 기부스 찍어라. 디베 초보세야 돼. 저러고지 요머세야 요머래. 디베로 디도라지 요머이 타이베 그치. 좀 그 세대네 영자 방매주에 레를 줘서 거기 계속 해야 돼. 계속 그 팬비 계속 해다 해야 시시에 돈다 방매리 내가 누자 거다 티야 뭐지. 이 고슴 제가야 여러 티야단 요머세야지로 어디서는 그 정신이 차로 어디서는 이거 저 디베 저거도 누자 휴레셔야지. 어디야 뒤치고 어디 뒤치고 진짜 파파도 저거 있어요. 다디 초샤니 차도지 차바지야 니에디시 니 차바지 이러고 말이지. 저녁에 봐요 말시티 세들라 메고스도 근데 제가실 메어 농도 좋으니까 근데 메어시 다 소주 타면서 인도지 시부시고 말이지. 그래서 콜 좀어서 메어서 좀 거기지. 세대야 계획이 있어요. 좀 파파서 다시 버리려 디안도지나 이거 연대 거기지. 어때서 되게 남자들이 그게 농지에서 좋은 받아 맞으세요. 어디게서 쉬어서 어디다.
So we have talked about two key points today. Number one is there is no good reason why we should get attached to the dear and near ones, because relationships are not permanent and static. They do shift and change. So friend becomes enemies, enemies becomes friends. They have been equally kind to us, equally unkind to us. So there is no point of making a big fuss about that these are my dear and near ones and get too much attached to them, and these are the enemies because and hate them because they become our friends too, or they have been. So that's one main point we talked about today. And then as Geshe said, that we ourselves might have experienced that in our life here, or we witness here. So that's a direct perception, and we don't need any Dharma quotation or any reasoning to establish that point. But then we have gone through some of the scriptural quotations, such as Letter to a Friend by Arya Nagarjuna, to establish that our relationships in samsara, as we change our rebirth, they do shift and change. So therefore, don't get too much attached to the changing relationships, right? So that's the one point we dealt with. The second point that we dealt with is, we should protect ourselves from being negatively influenced by the childish sentient beings, right? As we have a saying ordinarily, like if you are in a bad company, you might become bad, right? And if you are in a good company, you might become good, right? So that's the simple thing as much as we can say here. And as Geshe explained, so we should not associate too much with the mindset and the childish behaviors of childish sentient beings. So this is why in Lamrim, stages of paths to enlightenment treatises, we often talk about the need to kind of protect ourselves from negative friends, big talk Tibetan. Yeah? And the negative friends, do not come in some special form, as if they will come look like a monster with the horns and the fangs and, here, I'm here to get at you. Well, they don't, they just come like ourselves, kind of looks like they care about us, and all the things they tell us looks like for our benefits. They're very smiley, and they can be very sneaky. And in the process of that, we get negative influence, right? That's what the negative friend means. We are not necessarily looking for a monster looking like negative friends. There isn't, okay? So it's important that, yes, we deal with them, but at the same time, we do not want to associate with their mindset. If we want to associate with someone, then we should look up to the great examples, such as the Arya beings, the transcendental beings, isn't it? Because they see the truth as it is, and they have incredible qualities that we would like to acquire, isn't it? We should look up to our gurus, and who embody incredible qualities and proper way of behaviors, right? So we should look up to them. They should be our role model, not the childish sentient beings, and my footnote, leave them alone. Geshe didn't say that.
Lord took the lombe, Lord took the lombe, Gimbu, the Tangbe, Shivana, Lord Jonga Menji Batan, Langdola, Keve, their Tangbe, Shivani, Langdola, Keve, their Tangbe, Shivani, Langdola, Keve, their Tangbe, Shivani, Mige Badan, Mige Mobadan, Somle, then Chima, Ni, Sosir Sungbe, Tini, Sonya, Tini, Sona, young Java Fisher de Tango Suzu Jugo Sone, Shadows, that Shiva said, she thought Deva was the mother of Shiva Saji. Young Timmy say, Lord Tujul, the Deva, Lord Jonga Menjil, Shivas, Sita Carson, Lord of Michival, Shivasiora, Hemishika, Shiva said, Shiva Suju said, this said, what did it has a New Year's? She said that so the dish was that. Long door did that, and she longer be in the Shivas. Or did so the Shiva tell teacher would did be. So Park Meiji, Kansaji, Pudon said this. There is that Pudor was the son of the treasure, Shiva said the current 파파마에 강사들에서 송샤시 어디다 대망고서도 못하는 시바체야 텔셀세야 다 다당한테 시바체야 저대 말이 로 중심들 때는 시바체야 들어 이제 달랑달 몸에 들 시바세고 당한테 다들 시바 닉마 시바세야 돼 시바소유 주세야 돼 죽도저 지도 어디 아니 로 중심들 때 시바세야 돼 가지 랑서 메시기 삼번 마오비 삼번 내제 마시비 근데 보고 슝슝여라 어딜세거라
로 투줄레네 랑도 마신의 집을 쓰고 좀
스머다 로 투줄때다 로정아 미제디 시바차고 슝슝차고 어디서
So the term that we encounter here is called chiba, which literally means a child or being childish, isn't it? And so it could have multiple meanings. I think based on the Samadhi Raja Sutra, King of Concentration Sutra, cited in the commentary, and as Geshe explained, one way to understand what does being childish mean, chiba, is that usually you make a distinction between a transcendental Arya being who sees the ultimate reality non-conceptually and directly as it is, nakedly, right? So transcendental beings are not childish, isn't it? Because they see the truth non-conceptually, naked as it is. And the childish sentient beings are those who don't see the truth non-conceptually. That's one way to differentiate between being childish or being Arya. Okay? The another way to differentiate is in terms of maturity, isn't it? Like teenagers, like 15, as it's mentioned in the text, so which works here, right, in the West, 16 and below are teenagers, I believe. So sometimes when you have not reached the maturity of thinking, right, and so you don't know what is the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing you shouldn't be doing. You don't know, right, what needs to be adopted, what needs to be abandoned. So your maturity is not there. So from that point of view, you can say you are a child, isn't it? I mean, compare the 15-year-old to the 60-year-old. Who is a child? 15-year-old, right? But that has nothing to do necessarily with seeing the truth nakedly or not, right? We are not differentiating on that ground. But in terms of the age maturity, your mental capability to understand stuff, things. So in the Dharma context, we talk about the practice of abandonment and adoption. Langtor, right? Lang, adopt, cultivate. Thor, get rid of, abandon. So somebody who hasn't reached that maturity of what needs to be abandoned and what needs to be cultivated, such a person, right, could be referred to as a childish or chiba.
그래서 소소기우 해봐 레타데와 소소에스 제네타데 소소저에 기우이면은 소소기우데 파메지 가사제스 부도시에데스 데네 땡게데레스 소소기우 타데도냐 소소기우 줘바이 해바다로스 세다 시바 소소기우 세저로 시바세야 직세 요 소소기우 세야 그래서 소소 레 소사데 제네 소소 조에서 에네 소소 레사 소소 요아리 바도 냠도 디레 도아메자 레 소소 소조가서 소소기우 세워리스 디 부도르베 디레 송샤시워 데미라 나 데네 땡에디 디게볼레라 소소 타데 조야나 소소기우 줘봐 이스 콩디 데미라 소소기우 시바 소소기우스라나 시바스는 미진거듯이 다 로투줄도 것이 다 소소기우스도 레 소소산 소소기우 줘야 되지 줘봐 이 시바 따로사 사 고아가 소지 예반데세 또 소소기우데 구카보여바고 가르는 고스데 코 레라보여 때 지시도 배코 코르사데 때 지야고지데 가드 조르르 슈조 되게 쓰다 고아가 소지 예반데 시바남다 유메데베 체 체드 책예버서 그 런도지 삼조도 템베 차지 정세 때니 깨지게 写是根性上去将个性在于超人叫了，这个没人么说，可老学吧的没准备，有的中山的店的有这么些这一点写生，有这么些个没准备这样，就完了，是各自没劲，浪到了每个不写是，搞笑无别是你，说那么给小了。像那样，没个性，创新的，这他们写吧，说是就那绝对就准备是我想，现在干了，偏到节在，就没写完是，让下了偏别是，他全都特别是，当地小当地小无所。当地下我说，地下没我说，现浪到几度，现在毛了吧？没呢，他都没人被关的是，但是高要老百姓吧，大起创新到位是，没搞完一些呢，偏把人没讲，同的民族性，他妈是。让个浪子出现的些嘞，全都一万起来，在这也说的也没对别是，你话人民得到，你是那么这个想法呢是，那就偏偏就去给去说嘞，说着嘞，年就老不些了，他在那给我的这些个嘛现在嘛年呢。可偏偏走了是，也是些3年是，哪里没个性，传几位提建议是，可让人念着呀，就是那个得了，那样偏把些美女吧，说些吧对，怕了偏把就美女吧我是，我这人的，所以就是正的人是怕不。可把拉萨这样去的那个人个嘛是，那他妈是说个球就是，可这玩没东西的，就要我现在，那个哥们穿着我的是，就是我搞我去不了的是，现在所以就先把所有就的忙着噻，就在这，快了点呢，就我们就有的咱那个还没给，所以有的娘这样说，的这是，但这玩意不是，的这是他先把所有就是我的这回事。
So Geshe-la's whole reading and explanation is based on the Tibetan terminology. Chiba is childish. Sosokyo usually we translate ordinary being. Well, that wouldn't help explain the Tibetan word. The Tibetan word is almost, it's very hard. As I said, literal translation is something people don't do. But just bear with me just to get the sense of the Tibetan word. Sosokyo is almost like a childish individual sentient being kind of thing. So what the word individual or soso has to do with, now we are going with the Tibetan word, okay, not the English word here. It has the sense of that, the karma that you create is a very personal karma. So you reap the fruits of the karma accordingly, right? There is not such thing as you do a karma and then there will be a bunch of people who will, come with you to enjoy that karma. It's individual-based karma. That's what it means, sosokyo, right? Individual sentient being kind of thing, going with the Tibetan word. Okay. Of course, in English, probably it won't make any sense. So the point we have been making so far is do not associate ourselves with childlike, individual, ordinary sentient beings. Because we might get negatively influenced by them, and they are very difficult to be pleased, isn't it? It's just like very momentary thing. Like you do something that seems to be so happy and so gleeful, and then the next minute they look like they're mad with you. We don't know what happened, right? It becomes so momentary to make them pleased or unpleased, right? It's very unreliable. In that sense, and then not only the definition of childish, ordinary, individual sentient being is that not only they themselves don't engage in that which is positive or virtue, but if you behave in a Dharma and positive way, they may not like you. Actually, they might hate you for being positive or virtuous, And such is the nature of childish, ordinary sentient beings. So if we associate with them, we trust them completely, then we might learn a lot of negative things from them, and whatever good qualities or behaviors that we ourselves might have, they might decline, isn't it? And we are not going to get benefit from them in a positive way, but we might learn much more negative way, right? So all of those things are the meanings that goes into what it means to be childish, ordinary individual, sentient beings.
책다 매나양 이미 세상 좋았다 뭐버도만 되는 시베추 돈데 넘버리베 이메도 세소사 되들 들레자 펜바 메도지 네바지라 좋아네 현양 시바남지 멍즈네 렉당 소바 테바소 룽조 소 로에 터히 사바나라 메니 대다게 부순소와 미수베 차도세진 르소소다 랑다 냥이라나라 메니 랑이 라바르 셰체 대다던 진심시니시 진심시 진심기 넘버 소바도 대다다 대다 랑에 마나라 메니 rāñi chōgō ñamdhī sī, sēmpāṅ tē kēngbē sī ngā jē tētā lā sī, nye bātā dēmbāṅ dzūmbē gō yōndēn zē tē, yōndē jē tē, tēnā dāna yōndē jē lō ñamdhī sī, rāṅ tōshī, rāṅ dōng kē chūkpa jē bātā, kyōng chā lī dā tē mē nye bā jē nō, dā lī mē tē ñānē sī, kōrā jē bā sō yī shir, 다들 내봐도 등에제 좀바시 집에 줄에 뒤나시게 세 나양 시바테다다 땡지 기발에 달아스 푸숨 달 폭소 펜베 도지기 톱데세 슈세자 메도라 나바군디 펜바 메도퍼 마세 시바다다 로노 초시바 현가실라 메네세 다랑다랑 쇼이 연데 죄네 대중 초신테디 쇼래 니조자디 매바 따지부 니바쇼다 시에서야는 시바나다 로네 시바테다 지다니 다 대바다 현에 매바 소 노마다 자로스 어디지 수지올 접다 시바 수지올 접 좀 가져서다 데려다 수주 가갈다 시고지마다 배치바 녀마 잡을 조나 애들 좀 맞아 서서 조나 연된다지야 말스 어제 벤때지 연는 가지지가 메는 양 마스 셔타도 지 해다 메서 셔다 콜레 조나 좀 맞아 연된 리버차니요 말이 스타드리기다 디버 줘보세요 디서 시바주 배치바 녀마 디스고다 어디 지금 지서자 다 고바 메바 코 시바 수주는 조사 고바 메바 땡고다 좀마도 연대산이 자야 말이스 어디 있어.
So stanza 12 on page 103 reads, they, meaning childish, individual, ordinary sentient beings, are envious of superiors, competitive with equals, arrogant towards inferiors, conceited when praised, and if anything unpleasant is said, they become angry. Never is any benefit derived from the childish, unquote. So Geshe-la's explanation pertains to that stanza. So the point we have been dealing with is we are not saying that every ordinary individual sentient being is necessarily negative and bad. So don't go with that. But among ordinary sentient beings, particularly, there are those who don't behave well, right? And this is where we're talking about. We need to protect ourselves from such, right, ordinary, individual sentient beings. Because if we associate too much with these, so to speak, bad apples, well, we can become bad apple too, right? Metaphorically speaking. So we don't get any benefits associating with negative, childish, individual sentient beings. Not every one of them, but we said among them, right? So I'm specifying it. We should not associate with full trust in those childish, ordinary, individual sentient beings who behave negatively, think negatively, and they have nothing positive to teach us. And we don't want to be negatively influenced by them. And so there's nothing to gain from them. Why? Because their behavior tells the whole story. And here are the things. What is it? Those who are superior to them, they become very jealous of them, right? They don't appreciate, right, anything in others. And those who are equal to them, then they are like to compete with them in a negative sense, isn't it? And those who are inferior to them, they belittle them, look down upon you, poor you, right? And so these are the qualities of childish, certain ordinary sentient beings, and there's nothing good to learn from them. So being with them is like being with dig dog, negative friends, So we don't want, to be that.
Ningu dora so jebo de yumi loju la so shadang lo didi de chewi tam na so de xian ya zyu de chama so mige ri de ma chi ji yang ye wen zhong de la de ni jiang ni ro zhou ya na ni ba ko de zhou le da de na ya pe ma min ju ye ta te da zhou ba me sha bo xi ba nam za zhou be ni ba je ba de ba wo the Suju Dunda Karida said the Nagi, gave what the Butam said, the Mata, and the Bay said the Yugun or the day the Tam of the Seshima Paya, the Tams and Shayamara. She says, Kadi in the Kong Jaramata, Yondela Chia Jayamar, said Shivan and the Madon, they said, did it, Shivan, Dunjimi, she was there, call it a lurking. In the Dorjee trouble to me if this was what she was trade or something.
So the point we have tried to make here is do not associate with childish, ordinary, certain sentient beings. Let's put the word certain here because we said not every sentient beings are necessarily negative. And why? Because we could easily get negative influence by them, and there's nothing good that's going to come. Trusting them and behaving like them. That's the main point. We are never not saying that we should not, we should hate them or something like that. We shouldn't hate anybody, as a matter of fact. And so being with them, we learn many what we call the wrong things or the bad things, and because these are the individuals who are completely kind of sucked into the mundane affairs of this lifetime. Their whole concern is about this life, right? How to be famous, how to be, Geshe Gyeltsen said, sexy or brave, or for that matter, how to be, a big name, and how to be like rich and well, all of these things, and they never think about what is good for the next life, right? They don't think about spirituality or Dharma necessarily. Everything is about the mundane affairs of this lifetime, all the worldly appearances of this life. This life is everything, right? Gets sucked into that, right? And that's why there's not something we can learn from them about how to take care of, future lives or anything like that.
She's a drop to me. Sheba Mado, Shepa, Mado, she, Madon, 마데 제바 니롱오 해다 제라레 시바나네 나야 메드시 통화민주 나야 메마tam 시에던 로리 저에 동해양 민중쇼드 다게 저에 롱해송스 어디에다 시바도 좀마도 그래서 들라도 처음에데 나바고드 다지 버리스 다이노소 네바마 요마라와 시에던 조바 동해 마지막 요마레시 시바 마동시 마동다 암조 거야 마고 시거로 마데지와 니롱오스 세다 시바세 소지도 데다 코라 종지 마시바다 근데 코 내주저서 마와데 야야레스 제라레자 시나데 나야 미데 통하면 나야 메마타 시에다 로레 저에 동해양 민용 쇼데 다기 철롱 예송스 제라레도 시바는 나야 메도시스 그 디케서 해줘 말했어요. 통하면 나야 메저 체야도 시바도 체도도 계속 시켜 말시시 ene 시에던 로레 저에 동해양 민용 쇼데 다기 저 동스 근데 시바도 저 동해 민용 말시다 시바 소주 마도나 되어야레스 세다 티세 시바 소주 도교 말 초상부터 로그레스야 되는 들이
in the miscellaneous collection of discourses in Tibetan called Tsom, as is explained, being with childish, ordinary certain sentient beings, it's just like being with your enemies. If you're always with your enemies, right, you always get harmed by them. Right? Nothing is come good out of being with your enemies because they always harm you. So it's just like that. We are likely to learn, bad things or negative things, associating with them. In the Jataka Mala, Garland birth life stories of Buddha, also it states that it's better, in some sense, to protect ourselves, isolating ourselves from childish, certain ordinary sentient beings. If you don't see them, then you don't have to worry about them, right? And you don't have to talk about them. You don't have to hear anything about them, right? That's a peace, and happiness right there. But if you associate with them, talk with them, you see them, then all this stuff come up, and so it's better not to necessarily see them or hear about them.
Lion duty demands that Shiva Dada Shiva Hill Tenzin Dorjee Jigla Mika Peri Geshe Gyeltsen Pakji Malan Ni Shantideva Tenzin Dorjee so curious Rajiniga Puma Shiva Juve Shiva Tadake Dal Pebe Tonsia Majishi Mishibla Dada Pebe Ton Jungse Mashi Shiva Minjuve Shiva Trobot member the job in Neva Poma Devi Langdola Kebe Moba Langdola Megebe Moba Namla Le Ta Ring Duse Shoa Shashing Digbe Trobot Dale Jang Ring Dribber Shene Pabe Sholas Jesus Lobby told you Ranchibu Ember Sondes Negodi Bakerless Shoka Chu Soshasin Duzimela Sangarsha Yebutan Yebutan Geshe Dadu Pansha Sheso the Kunjo Dinlichang Chudrimyambe Kansa number Pangbe Digbe Trobo Yonso Pangba Reba Show Tishin the Tawa Nyamada Shoka Nyamada Soa Nyambe Kansa na Pangba Sada Dundila Gawad Lila Zenda Koata Gawad Shoju Yabji Shobe Kansa the Kimba the Nyamba number Pangbe Digbe Trobo Yoso Pangba Reba Shade Rigiba Yonso Povi 在康萨得到了，当然是结果没效果是，我第一次他女的在把生意对吧？就是说他希望能做到开始呢，平时在把做的起脚嘛精神些，但现在呢比另外偏什么的听见这样解要嘛是，我这些就是。希望大家给拿偏多嘛，怕了偏多嘛，水推动那些嘛都要嘛，我这些现在希望能中就嘛是，我中就现在大家超过这些人重要这个是吧？我这小人是，这些当别个来是，小个就送下去，都是没法怎么下，接不到的接不到。这些大帮是我这里他节目当的，哎，你别冲去当的时候，我这里看电脑别对对，现在么都要嘛，这个帮过人是，对对的搞来了就考了搞，享受了家境小比看啥了，起码的电话能帮别是，你别找用是帮人把下的，人家不大用是帮人，再看啥得到，看啥得到了，当然是结果没效果是。我这有时帮谁的上对不对？考虑不个中职嘛些嘛，就是考虑呀，别考这些这当然是干什么是吧？考虑中职嘛是什么
？Stanza 14 reads, devoting myself to others in this way will bring about nothing but misfortune, because they will not benefit me, and I shall not benefit them, unquote. So as Kishla explained, that we should not associate with childish, certain ordinary sentient beings, because there's nothing that's going to benefit either us or them. Right? They have nothing good to teach us, and and we won't be able to benefit them either, in a sense. So it's going to be mutually mutually detrimental, being with each other and associating and trusting each other. As Geshe has been emphasizing this point all the time, the point here is do not cultivate the companionship of such, childish, certain ordinary sentient beings. Not that we should hate them or anything like that. And in the sutra called Clouds of Jewel Sutra, it's mentioned that if we associate with those who hold distorted views or the wrong views, then that could influence us. If we associate with those who don't keep their ethics properly or break the ethics, then we are likely can get influenced by them. So it's better not to associate with them and just kind of keep them at distance, so to speak. And also, being with such childish, certain ordinary sentient beings, really nothing meaningful we can learn from each other, right? All the talks are going to be mundane talks about this life. And all the gossips, that's what we're going to get. Gossip, they will tell you the gossip and we tell them the gossip. So we are just gossiping and wasting time, and that's not going to be beneficial to the either side, and that's just going to be distraction. So learn not to admire, such gossiping, negative, driven, childish, certain, ordinary sentient beings. Remember the word I said certain, not all of them, right? So I just put the word certain there. Yeah.
我的控制为什么代表什么结为没少我写作，老早差不多了，对大讲是，我同说刚把你家别的家庭那没行，第三的联系节目没意见，这个也把那把写有了，第一头呢写不帮你，旁边去就是那把联系写吧，当这比讲你们没关系。你们把没被意见，然后就不，创业没办法， ember never Sha he ember never Sha ember song so Chile Tarn Show Sha he Kamba Jibode Java Gashidius Mallet Jin Shed the Tomalia the Tedos. There that the Chivana the Mount said the ember never Chivana so near ember near says do. So ember says similar the Louis ember near that the Louis ember that Chivana draw the same disaster of some to said the ember near Shiva Tarring Shiguris. What is Chiva the Don Joma Dod and the Yondeta Yomaris was at the destiny.
So the point is that do not associate with full trust of certain childish, ordinary individual sentient beings because there is nothing going to good come out of for either side, and it's better to stay isolate ourselves from them. So when we talk in terms of Wenpa, isolating, this can be understood in two ways. There is the physical isolation, which means we can physically distance ourselves from them, right? From certain childish individual sentient beings, and isolating our mind in the sense that even when we are alone, so we have to watch our mind so that our mind is not perturbed by all kinds of crazy thoughts, right? So isolating our mind from all the crazy, the thoughts there. And so we would like to stop there today and welcome your questions. Do we have any on the, yeah?
There's one online so far. How to love without attachment. Could Geshe please speak about the distinction between love and attachment?
Chaje thone condition chila rawage. Chaje nalne chuwas tangi dwage. Dine karso gore tak zewa dan chakwa nyeliya ke keba yorwage. Zewa chekugo sta chakwa machele go yorwage. Zeza chakwa mebe thone zewa khande chegore. Chakwa de zewa nyegi yesam chima chero na sa.
네. that is what that 싫어 가가 니마 되바다 chakwa jiwa shagoro. 네, 네 카보 주제.现在그 샘디 등로 쳐봐 열시 그 chakwa에 줄 부도네. 시아제다 다다다 다가스 배 되바세야 그때는 어떻게 가요 말이지. 그래서 거기 되바다 chakwa니데 제가 예 갖고 좀 쓰고랬어.
인 되바다 chakwa면 되게 zewa다.
zewa다
chakwa. 다 배나.
저 지버다.
마다게 배나 더코나서 배다 샤마스나 배나 낭밀게 zewa chegoro 와다 chakwa 치교요 말와게. 제가 zewa다 chakwa니 이해sam을 간데 chegor스. chakwa 매버톤 zewa 치다니.
네, 됐어요. chakwa는 다 가서 저 유무고 나서 저서 zewa스도 야 심성우고 나지 말해. 그죠? chakwa서 콜베 현바시고 쓰러지지. 차스는 현바를 쓰고 이 현의 고야를 콜이야. 이제 zewa스는 현아도 보세요. 요 되바 샤지야 니용으로. 그죠?
zewa스는 현에디 간데.
zewa스는 현에 다 콜베 닝제는 콜 그게 그래서 저도 해야 될다. 그래서 저 후야 누구도 해야 사모다니. 되바셔야 될다 콜 샤니 될 더달이야. 제야 더달 사모다니 그 가래도.
군이 이해섬을 저게 나도 세부 시부터 좀 못게 말.
얘는 대서 가고야. 나 여러 그때 세나다 대서에서 뻔 다좀부터 실무도 되바 샤와티 세 샤와티 자르디 세 사야 되바 여리시. 근데 샤와 말이세. 어디서 마시지 다다 지당고 이제 녀자셔야 되지 거다. 싫어도 되바다 샤와지와 샤고라.
So Geshe-la's explanation is, and hope that works for you. I'm just translating here. It's really difficult to differentiate between sewa, love, or sometimes people translate as compassion, and chakpa, attachment. Attachment, that English word, I don't know how much sense it conveys. The Tibetan word chakpa is necessarily an afflictive state of mind. Okay, it's a delusion, in other words. So when attachment pops up, it perturbs our mind. Okay, and it is stirred by in itself or by any other delusion. That's what we call attachment. Whereas the love has a more sense of caring for someone, isn't it? Right? You care about the other person, right? That's more of a love. And of course, you could cling to others out of love, or you could cling to others out of attachment, But it's sometimes very difficult to differentiate between these two types of experience. The other thing Geshe was talking about is really not, I think somehow Geshe felt the need to say that, so I will translate what he said. The difference between desire and attachment, right? The Tibetan word for desire is deba, and attachment is decha. So that it sounds almost the same, or chakpa. So in the non-Buddhist certain schools of thought, so they were not able to differentiate the difference between desire and attachments. They thought that all desires have to be necessarily delusional or afflictive, whereas in the Buddhist context, desires do not necessarily have to be afflictive, in nature. For example, arahats. Those who have completely abandoned the afflictive emotions, called, they don't have attachment to food, but they have a desire for food. Okay, and so we do make such distinctions. Of course, that's nothing to do with the question you asked, but Geshe talks about it, so I should translate that. Next, yeah.
Thank you, Geshe, for your teachings.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about stanza 14 with a sense of that it doesn't feel compassionate and kind to walk away when people are struggling with their view. So like I know when my view is clouded by anger and then I get to process it with a friend, then it helps me be better. So I think the part that I'm struggling with is where I can't benefit someone else.
Okay.
Like how do I step away without being selfish? Okay. It doesn't feel like a bodhisattva to be like, no, that's a struggle, I'm out. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mora kandi shue di ta tanda di karasogore ken di tsikje de chupshi ba de redwa ta pena ta soso kiyo nyam de thokti chiji yo mare ene karasogore phale phingi mare chule phing mare slab ro ge ni ga lo ta phungya kyure slab ro wa je ni ga lo phungya se di thol mora thiwas lik do sa tok ba ro ge tok ba che ro ge mora tok ba de ing do wa pena moran ji lungura lang se de yina roba ji ro ge de le ke shero se ji che ben ro ge ko ji samlo ta de lung di thol ro ge je phen do yung do ro ge roba de ngara chu ko shang ro sha ne ro ge a je na ane ko ke phen yo ma ro wa je mo moran gi ben ta mo se ma da sigmi do ta ji lung lang de yina ro ge de nyam do de ko lung la wi ne de nyam do de wi na kyo ro chen ro ge samlo tang da da de de phen ro wa ni ma je na ngara 소소 교배 치도 파 유치면이나 랑징징 소리로 말하게 콜라 편도 매버지 콜라야 룽랑만 깨지 셔로 전에 그 삼로 땅에 지 편도 여러 가게 어디 이거 말해서 저도 파라 편 톡을 말해서 되다 뭐 내제된 거다게 어디 컨데레서 어디 세세시는 곳을 괜찮소
제자한테서 수조사 다들 저 배지 주 강가데 이미 거기 주방 년받어서 될라 계산 마시게 돼 담을 쓰고 말아 요 말에 콜 롭데도 셔네 그 저런 가래는 콜 더시데 그 주저방에 마고 셔네 어치고 있듯이 말아
tamane morang ipedela kin lench kemna rawage morang roba ngwasham je lunglang de rawage lunglang ba de nyamdo de ne den de ya samlo tangro ro chemne phengyo ro ba so ro ge nge pa hape ba maro ba so rawage aso nim da rawage di dige ne mena ne
ale this is 계속 더 갑도 가다 체시가 체시서는 이 콜 처마데스 콜 가야 그게 셰고 소티 베전도 가다라는데
냠도 이제 계신 디고 왔다가
그래서 셰는 디고 자들 쳐대서 지야 말마 그 계지 갑가 종지 맞는 갑가들 체 냠도 레브로 와서 그래서 나는 그런 게 로드 게게 맞죠 셰 그래서 콜이야 코르메사 셰 콜 로드 게게 셰고 예스
I think what Stanza has stated is, I think, contingent upon that assumption that we could be in a situation where neither of us are going to be helpful to each other, you know. So in which case, it's better to bow out, so to speak. But the example you have given, right, maybe that could be in case you know that being with someone who's angry and you could help the person process the anger or something, you think there's some benefit, you know that clearly, then that may be exception to the case. With me? But if being with them, instead of helping that person, I mean, Geshe didn't say you get equally mad, right? And then that's not useful to anybody. So I think somewhere in other contexts it's said that if we can somehow calm down a person talking about other things nicely, skillfully, that's okay, right? Being with them. But if we are not able to offer that help, then better to stay away rather than, right? So that's the understanding.
So this kind of relates to Katie's question actually, but it seems to me that the whole discussion about the childish things, this is not a general advice on how to conduct our lives. Really has nothing to do with that. It's for the purpose of developing calm abiding, seeking solitude, right? And from that point of view, the term certain is totally unnecessary. It should not be. There is no certain who are good and certain who are bad. All are bad from the point of view of seeking solitude. That's really this is the whole discussion here. It's not about how to live our lives, what to do in this situation or that, to achieve that kind of. Furthermore, we cannot distinguish between certain people who are good and certain people who are bad until we become ourselves Aryas. So we are childish. All of us are childish, right? The foolish people are us, not them. So we cannot. So in order to be able to distinguish and to know who to associate with, we need to achieve that ourselves, to stop being childish. And we're childish right now. So that's why I have a problem with this term certain. It applies to all of them, all of us, I should say. All of us are childish and foolish.
Okay. Korangi samri di dishu wargeta danda dinalia chiba sose kiyo nyamdo thokti maja se che rawage
la
chiba sose kiyo nyamdo thokti maja se dis tanin da sungje mangsa daga do sung rawage chiba nyamdo thokti chena any kiyo mashi yonde ka yo mer turing age lab rawage Koraga di shege kapten rabu dis rawage kap delia and something thing is in rawage kia ki dinar chena ko kuju taka dos ka sa something chedu kala rawage embala ne misula thokte maje be so di chego rawaske di chane ani ko kuju dos di ma da chita nga da mizi ke na la rawage di chiju yo ma la lamna di takda tegi men dos ko rawage ka sa na nga so ke rawasa rawa dagi chik la rawa bena mi 상마 소소교 강가 두자 말에 스타디나 두가 치겐데서 냠도 루주 말라 rawage 상마 소소교 임바 난다 레사 rawage 소소교로 미 샴바들 주고서야 말아 나라 베나 소소교 레사 rawage 임비 선자 데네 칼사고레 소소 야나네 지 데베니 룽구스로 통데네 데네 소소교 많이 바차다 파 랍지야요 레스티 마노 소소교레 rawage 저 남주 미지게 기 랍자 인사 말에 스타팅에 제 고메야라 디 딱다 고주도 디 Sarasa, di imba na get da. In sense of things it be a lot of getting ready to Chivan to Droya down Dharma the Chero again. But the Chidam is a Kiala ya and Chiva in the summer of the Kasha Yagaji Chiva Yagaji that Chiva Tuga that didn't get your Marwas.
Yard dog you are the Julum da Kuju Julo Younger. Oh, this is Shiva Suju said this is but Lord Dorjee Shena, don't go and you did Juvan, but don't reveal. Or the young Suju that bag gets a share over years almost the camera.
That and the king swing the Chitang as a music yet and Labja Chaggy or the thing is in computing negative to get a car. This is Chidang, the thing is you just trying to get as clear answer as possible to your questions. So Geshe said that although we use the broad term called chiba sosokyo, right, childish individual sentient beings, but the explanation should be understood more in terms of this is actually advice for how we should lead our life, he said, not just in the context of developing samadhi or concentration, which makes a lot of sense. He said that among ordinary beings, we know that being with some people, right, we are able to learn, right, benefit each other in a positive sense, isn't it? Being with certain ordinary people, we negatively influence. So among ordinary people, there are differences, right? It's not like all being equal. So if we feel that being with someone that our positive qualities are increasing and theirs is increasing, then there's no problem there. But associating with each other, we feel that we are negatively influencing each other. That's the issue.
And I agree that this is, when presented that way, it is a general advice on how to conduct our life. But this is not what's in this chapter. This is not his purpose. Shantideva is not giving a general advice on life. All this reasoning is presented for the purpose of how we can seek solitude. So that's what I'm saying. This is my qualm about it. It's in that sense, the distinction of certain is misleading.
Sure. Okay.
We have to seek solitude. That's the whole point. Not associating with some and not associating with others. It's about not associating with anybody, because the whole point is that we cannot achieve calm abiding as long as we associate with anybody, right?
Ta ka sanga migu so de shine in the something to go was aroge de do wala met mi ro de emba education bor was aroge emba education ba imba so ta ani mi ta so so give the tugri share the wage pa sha go res quran lenya ge ko ba kyumjen de dir ro was ro ma do chi nam ju mi je kan de ke war se gi labja de ri ga mar was ka de la ta labja de yin de chogo de yin ju zo ko ba de mar was ro da de something to be da shine to be da de ton da emba ten ko ba da o be che je da de ne so je de tugri chi me ba de de shi ro was
de chiba so ju dong zhi xi ma se de den de go ma ju ma de kare chue xi ge yin xi je se
ma da gen din al she de so da da liu din al she de captain ko ba de captain ko ba de ting je ge chi de zo song de mar wes ko da
ma de na da dingen zi ji wo de dingen zi ji wo ji
something ge liu ro ba ge cha da de
something de xi wo de something ko yu a ga li ya de ba ta de ga ji tin ye ma wo ji go sha ba se ta da de so ju do ya du ji xi ba de la something le ne yu de yu go ya sha ba ko ko ka so ju de de ji ba nge ba ji du ji xi ko jo mo do yu de ji ya yu ba me sha ba
So Geshe-la's contention is that, yes, of course, the chapter is called Perfection Concentration, and the need for solitude is important, isolating, right? That's it. But at the same time, he said, in our everyday life, right, if we learn to, because that will help us to prepare there, right? Otherwise, that could be distracting. Yeah.
Geshe, here.
Where are you? Oh, yeah. Behind the glass wall.
Behind the glass wall, yeah. So yes, I think it's kind of related to what Vladimir's question. So I mean, the attachment part, so it doesn't necessarily mean to abandon the people, right? Especially because there's certain situations where we have relationships with people, our parents, right? Some of us are in relationships, like even worse, some of us are married. So so it doesn't necessarily mean to abandon, right? I guess that's my first question. And if it's not the abandonment part, then how do we treat these relationships? And maybe he kind of touched it in a few moments, but I just in a few points. But it's how do you cultivate it? Like those relationships, especially those who are kind of like I said, like those of us who are in relationships. There's this kind of like like forever thing that you're kind of involved in or of sort. And so how do you balance that? You know, how do you work with that?
Okay. Korangi kandi shwe di disigor again da tanda di chiba society da dallo ken thugri chema ngusum borwa gen di kodan rab di kona chema panda da nganzo Koran meje mang se del ya sajang yu jang ro ge sajang mene de mil chik se da chobo chong de wa yo ro ge so nyam do de yo wa so ro ge ta dige de pa lue tan pangs la ge yo mar wa sa ro ge ta dige nyam do de wa ni yo ro ge de wa de nya go ro ge ta diring song jue di ro wa an del pa ja we na kari che go sa da sajang de wa yo re nang min de wa yo re chik de wa yo ro ge ro ge an di nyam do che de da ta da di diring song jue di pa ja we na sam tang da ro kari che go ro sa ge
거기 다 되고 소 사당이나 거기 되게 로베 조금 되게 그게 그래서 소야 뭐도 배야 다니는 게 조금 연바이나 어다 들리 뒤 just 봐 종지신 콜에 코 just 봐 슈가 소리시 어디 많이 쓰거라 뭐도 지야 남서가 잠들 때 가시 우드세요 말로
알 찍질 파 페로체 된
다 탑시시는 관계 퀄리티 ਪਰ 로도 마셰셰네 소 축도 되고 시고서 왔다.
So I think in that context, right, given that you know you have family relations, you have romantic relationships, and all of that, how this could connect is that even as we are husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, or any other relationships we have, that if one of us is really behaving negatively or doing the wrong thing, then we should not get influenced by each other's negative behaviors. With me, if there's a way we can help each other to correct our way of thinking or behaving properly, we should do that. If there's no way to do that, so at least, you know, we don't let ourselves be negatively influenced by our relational partners. Does that make sense? So that's how it is. Of course, you know, we never talk about abandoning any sentient beings here, right? This is Bodhisattva's way of life. We not really care most about sentient beings, but we do have relationships. But our relationships should not become a negative influence on each other, even if we are husband and wife, or children and parents, or boyfriend or girlfriend, or any other relationships we have. Does that make sense? Think about it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, there's more questions online.
Yeah.
The next question, what is the relationship between attachment, grasping, and clinging?
Actually, I need an English explanation. How do you differentiate between clinging and grasping? First define that, then I'll translate. I understood the difference between attachment and grasping, but what's the difference between clinging and grasping? The questioner should explain that to me.
I'll ask for that follow-up. Maybe we could get the distinction between the two?
Okay.
Thank you.
This is going to target on the two Australia Chakpada Wage, and I'm going to Shambase Wage, Chaksins Nichigorwa, didn't Marikaba or res, Chakpada Shambase. Chakba the Shambala Kabaka or res again.
Chakba the Shambasana. That's look, Chakbasana that 지당시와 현바서는 항상 봐 타고도 숙심을 요새 현바서 말에 그래.
차과 니와 체를 지금
체를 드레스 지상 그 신고 sem도 생각 좀 현바서 그 너무 미유를 가는 거야 봐 숙심을 저 현바서 저 소소저는 차과서 지다 그 차과장 차과서 그러마.
So maybe one way to differentiate between attachment and grasping is that, you know, grasping is more on sort of an intensified form of attachment, where there's more sort of this clinginess, isn't it? Right? Just holding on to more strongly. So that's grasping. But attachment can be mellowed one too, right? It doesn't have to have that clinginess there. Okay.
Geshe said that we should not abandon beings.
Yeah.
But Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, abandoned his family, completely abandoned them. Furthermore, it's said in the sutra that there's never been a Buddha who achieved enlightenment while living in a home with people.
Yeah.
Never been a Buddha who achieved enlightenment while caring about husbands, wives, children, and so on. So.
Sure. 가서 가서 뢰 당주 말라 와 심진으로 와게
나
청주 semba기 다 조로부터 신대 인사 심진 뢰 당요 말 와로 와게 제대 간리아 심진 방주 요 메시지 고랑 데 치와던 거로 와게 아니 심진 방주 매베이나 다자 그 덤바기로 와게 낭미 유제 방제 친도 와서 거로 와게 디 카르레스 유 방방 마르레스 거로 와게
아예
다가나시 엔 도그나리아 아니 배 나라야 힘을 대는 상계경 상계 제 중요 말레스 지도 갈아다바 힘 방제 패고 걸서 그러게 상계보다 어디게 세세시 대세시 경고 말게
아예 되도 배 가라서 심지어로 다셔야 될 심지어 콜 비게 도미지 상야지 중노 르다로 대사 가가시 심지어로 다시고라시디
가가 제발 쓰고 말레스
맞지
아니 힘을 대는 상계 매베 잡아르게 이제 미지 다힘 방제 또는 마다 상계 매바
첨반을 상기가 요 첨진대바 상기야 열이
안 도나리아 힘을 대는 상계의 제 상계 제 중만 말slap샤스 거로 그러서디
상기가 쇼여서 제가 인터부드세 상대비
말레
그래서 이지 신세발에 인 제가 냥슬랑에 지금 말이 되게 가게라요
상계스 거로
그래
Okay, the first thing about abandonment, right? So the abandonment, in the sense that bodhisattvas are completely, they dedicated sentient beings, means in their mind, they always think about sentient beings, right? They could be physically isolating them, but in their heart, they can never think, okay, I don't want to work for you, right? Then that's abandonment, right? Physically living behind is not necessarily abandonment. The second one, where did you say that in a sutta it says that being at home, nobody has ever got enlightened, right? And Geshe kind of contests that. He said that there are cases, examples, being at home, right? And his example is King Indrabodhi, right? I think being a king and running his kingdom affairs, right? Through his practice, he became a Buddha. So it is possible. Yes.
Thank you for the teachings. I just had a revelation when you said, when two people are fighting and we look at the person rather than the energy of anger.
Yes.
I thought about how things are run here in the West, that's not even taken into consideration of making, prayers for the excess anger that we have on the planet that people carry in their bodies and end up incarcerated.
Yeah.
So in a country where that's not even taken into consideration, it's really hard to navigate that part. But I wanted to say thank you, because that was just a revelation of the energy of anger, which we all hold, and how can we heal it from an energetic level versus, incarcerating people.
No, thank you. Morangi, that's did shaking. The immune share of Chilarawa, that they did the draw medicine king, Tagi. 가르쳐고래 소벨리우 나리아 콩드 님이 셰브로하게
라
소벨리우 시샤는 콩드 님이 송인바게 게시 도다 유과 슈베이나 콩드수로 랑고레스라게 뭐스 나자 땅에 무주들 랑고레 균에서 간지 송인바게 디 모라 셈을 편보시 중에서와 가소소 데 롱랑게나 콩드 롱랑고스라버와 아주 눕죠 나리아 어디 다 가서게 강사다 그런게 다 유모처럼 어디 예와야고 치고요 말해서 와게 진짜 뭐라나 디답에 이메일로 들어가게 중원사 근데 예와 치대 저러게 강사리야 내니 대치 좀 유모리야 디체스라베 저러게 제가 디zambol링디나리아 콩주 다산에 콩주기 다 가서 어디 캡션 보시면 차도 여러 와서 와게 근데 선단 this same share should samlo tang다로 붙이다로 하게 아니 니네 전에 다 미망고 시부지 디긴 신 중앙 주보다 되는 용거로 하게 근데 코랑 섬주를 시에서 하게 제가 콘도 시답 걸 직송선 링머게
라
맞아 콘도 좀 해야 콜이야 지금 남주 다 잠블링나 롱랑 콘도 망고 싶어요 하게
콘도 좀야 다 콘도 님이 콘도 계산 좀 저거다 이 소지의 미디어 저거제 콘도 전에 야 소가 패도 야지야 말아다 가지 그 중요한 뭐 패도 야야 봐야 다 갑자기 쟁지 소 캐라나 근데 처음 보고 그 더다 갑자기 캐라 대지라도 뭐 이제 그 중요한 미생 보다 처음 보고 뭐뭐 걸 연대 여봐라 제가 조조의 콘도 님을 사야 되나 어디다
So Geshe appreciates your sharing, and in the Buddhist literature, of course, the way we talk about how to heal from within. There's no easy way out. There's so much anger, as we said, but it's always to reflect on the destructive nature of anger. It doesn't serve any good purpose for anybody at all, isn't it? I'm the one who gets angry. Your mind is disturbed, right? Then also under the influence of anger, then we might do violence and crazy things, which is going to harm a lot of other people as well, And so in that sense, anger does not benefit either side, oneself who's getting angry or angry at someone else. And so we reflect on the disadvantages and the negative energy of anger so that we were able to kind of subside it and tame it down through that. Right. And I think maybe the point we made earlier about the uncertainty of relationships in samsara, right? That might help us also to look at anger, right? If we're angry at someone, maybe we dislike that person, see that person as enemy, right? We hate. But then we know the relationship is not going to be that forever, right? It changes. So that might also help us to kind of deal with the healing process as well.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question in the sacred setting. My question is around mental illness or neurodivergence. Sometimes it seems increasingly so that there may be behaviors that may be attributed to someone who might be a childish being, but there's mental things happening. Is there wisdom for how to relate in matters such as that? Maybe a family member, maybe in the work setting, and maybe a child, a relationship that you can't necessarily treat in some of the ways that we're speaking here. So when we layer on mental illness, mental divergence, that may display some of those characteristics, what are some wisdoms, some words to work with that in that way?
The Quran Gita Chiwa Shua Koko Nama Tochina Shurochi Sarwagan. Quran Tiesha the Disha, that Tito Dina Sevi and a same Naza Yugam Wagan. The Quran the major ton of same Naza Yugam share Wagan. Says I'm to Nami in a rare, so now let the young sticker Wagan. Says Consum the Dewache, the Chetan me, the what Chetan Shimaya Marwagan, on the same Naza Yorwagan. Chesa Dinde Tholia, the Chexam Tangda with the Nangwe Shun and Wagan. A located of Lane and Dinde Yamdoliata, Cascore, Dewacheta so Marwagan. Thola Chixway in a Manasa. Same in Naza Yugan.
Sim Tangas Rizomazim Josivora.
That is so much symbol of Sabakashi Mess and also stay there with New York. Someone Yoba Mardagan, that Yoba Yoda again. Yeah, Cashe Chidane, that's similar Naza Damada Yumudas, Lujo again, Rogan. No.
That she does the same as that Namdo Kazum Yongor. That Kazia Yonja Rizomazim says, she got some to do no drinking and bashun, and you got Trinoma Shaw and Sojora. He said that they call some Koyang was saying, Chita, Buzuto Machina, Kaji, Pendo Yorta, Chita Gangan Bodosina. So the card some Koyang Boyana, and it has John Station, Lamsati, Medea Yongomari, Yawari, she would guy Yogomaris, but there's Temple, Soto.
In a Pajama meeting, Scorasem with Naza, there's some time to guy, right?
But I call Tomoko Mio Chesorda. That call Prism Naza, you get the same. That call daughter, she go call some Hayado Karishi and Disha, we said Hika Yomara.
But as major to the Kunjo channel,
Koran Kare Gavidu, Koran Devana Hishin Gaya Shiarama. Chita Sim Kibo Unati Karza, Devo Unati, Tomoko, Sim to Goyang Washina,
Geshe says, that is really difficult thing to answer right away. It could be very situational thing, isn't it? Depending upon different nature or the kinds of mental sicknesses. And of course, if there are medications, treatment that helps them to deal with that, that must be continued, right? And then situationally, whatever we think makes sense to be able to help calm down the person or make the person feel better, right? It might change from situation to situation, That's all we can do. That's what we can think about right now. But those of us who are not in that situation yet, I think one way to prevent not every kind of mental illness, certain is that if we can develop what we call broadened perspective, look at things from multiple angles, right? If we can sort of loosen up, so to speak, right, then that helps us, right, not to get certain kind of mental problems, right? That's what to say. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop there today, and I have a number of prayer requests, if that's okay. Yeah, looking at the time. Again, again.
Plus,
Sende roage Rodney Briggs 30 Tonsha Lo Tunju Tunje Red Wagen. And it sende Danny Jenkins, sende Jose Alberto Roake, Montalano, Nenarwa Dave Macaulay Duke Fam Roake. So I have a number of prayer requests for healing for Dave Macaulay and Duke Pham, and prayer requests for deceased individuals. Rodney Briggs passed away on July 8th, 78 years old. Danny Jenkins and Jose Alberto Montalano. So let's do the Avalokiteshvara prayer for the deceased, and then Medicine Buddha for the healing. Okay. Chadong Golo Yube, Yabodon, Chendong, Gewa Songbe, Sangye Tong, Kala Kangbe, Dela, Jumba, Jere Sela, Chanze, Omani Beme, Omani Beme, Omani Beme, Omani Beme, Omani Beme. Omani Beme. Omani Beme Hori, Kawadi, Yododa, Jere Siwan, Rubjonin, Dowa, Tia Salam, Gueba Sho, Tuje Kunla, Yombe, Jomden, Senzang, Pebe, Nindu, Dunga, Dozone, Sanje, Menyela, Bindu, Yayiva, Chazelo, Theata, because the Begas, Mam, because the Begas around to somebody or so. Theata Begaze, Begaze, Man, Begaze, Begaze, and the Samonga de So Kawadi, Yoda, Lowaji Jamal, the Sala, Guebara Show, page 3. Lord Yazu, Udon Begaje, Gasan Pombe, Judo, Mimbasin, Dembanzin La, Wando Yich, Tanya Chugin Jola, so on the page 5. Mawa Dame, Windian Donga, Kari Johnson, Ninda Seza, Jamgan Yawa, Niwa, Yapse, Transon Tenzin, Mawe, Shiva, Tenzin Jebe, Jingon Zebe, Shije, Nikun Changju, Ten, Londo Tamje, Bebe, Beyen, Deja Kazu, Wendo, Tessa, Gonda, Cheze, Zombez, Yonzo, Yure, Tube, Nyap. Long Re De Jen Nube Beden Ba, Tubden Pan Re Tabo Shabden, Nona Home Zeba Namda Gun, Dendan Robe Pende Jum, Lundro Jume Shebe Tile Je, Kesan Duje, Chizue Lame Tuje Melamda, Kesan Duje, Dendam Sangmen Du, Choson Do, Chido, Chida Membe Dungun, Lundro Show, page 9. Ramjang Jinggen Gongbo Zeba Men, Zudo Namje Yeyun, Zhemazo, Shouzo Zeye, Lazo Sam, Dado Mishi, Chobi, Moju, Fuden Jidan, Losan Jawa Yi, Shiro, Denban Zembe, Bei, Tade Deja, Jungwe Yishi, Yangde Ninje, Ongo, Jiden Sumguen, Chana, Benmen, Denbe Zawa, Soso Dava, Namda, Chujin, Yangda, Langba Yi, Losan Yangden, Bedo, Shab, 对着家人农dân养百姓，上着南着上dân准备，公家是拉送着对不对？准备我打，前边东岸国王不着的，准备流浪是工作的，准备等等那些，开着新年宣布小点说，开边朗读故事再到这，准备查查年早上。 上边的家日本一些农送的新年宣布，带上罗浪这边等等的，民众大学上面时间，大间之间等着白下，这的新年宣布小点说，说上叫我世界去了，昨天当街送面听来见，早上拉上的。 其他门别两个人多说，强就心说人不接，马街不能接，也把娘把没把养，可能也我来说，当年大娃人不接，马街不能接，也把娘把没把养，可能我。 我来说，啥些别接就是没到咱们为了那些年的。 上界行动没得为我也如果这我说刚的让为过来新港所碰到的我马路中文，现在希望定睛要下边10点半多等有这一档过路热闹满的，你养大呀面叫我看到养大老忙的，人们直接把老老子。 萨达拉耶原来让做人多些，常给过把牛多肉。